On the night of July 9, 1943, 160,000 Allied troops began landing on the southwestern beaches of Sicily. The air was thick with anticipation and the distant thunder of artillery. As the troops scrambled onto the beaches, whispers of ancient stories and lingering fears seemed to echo through the chaos. After nearly a full week of fighting, which yielded the city of Syracuse and little else, General George S. Patton was tasked with advancing toward Palermo. The journey was treacherous, with Italian forces determined to hold their ground. The Americans had to travel nearly 100 miles along a narrow, heavily mined road. Meanwhile, 60,000 Italian troops stood in their way, ready to defend their homeland. Yet Patton's men reached Palermo in just 4 days, with hardly a shot fired. This lightning advance established Patton's reputation as America's greatest general of World War II. He called it the fastest blitzkrieg in history, and it was certainly the least costly in terms of American casualties. The strategic brilliance was complemented by an unlikely alliance with Sicily's mafia families. While British and Canadian forces fought bravely along the island's east coast, the Americans faced a different challenge. They had to seize and subdue the central mountainous region of Sicily. The key point in the German and Italian defensive line was Mount Camerata. It sat just west of the towns of Villalba and Musameli. The mountain was fortified with a mixed brigade of motorized artillery, anti-aircraft guns, and 88mm anti-tank guns. A squadron of German panzers, including the newest Tiger tanks, was stationed there. The caves and rocky ridges of Mount Camerata had served as a fortress since Roman times. The mountain dominated the two main roads the Americans had to take to reach Palermo. Lieutenant Colonel Salemi commanded the defense with a cautious optimism, concerned about the lack of air support. He was confident, however, that his forces could make the American advance costly and slow. Local stories whispered of the haunting caves and shadows that seemed to move of their own accord. Some soldiers swore they saw ghostly figures lurking among the rocks at night. There were tales of unexplained noises that echoed through the mountain's caves. As the Americans prepared to attack, strange phenomena seemed to bolster the defenders' resolve. One veteran spoke of a mysterious figure cloaked in darkness, watching silently from a cave entrance. The local villagers avoided certain parts of the mountain, claiming they were cursed by ancient spirits. Despite this, the Americans pressed on, confident in their strategy and firepower. The battle for Mount Camerata was fierce, with shells exploding and gunfire ringing out into the night. Yet amid the chaos, soldiers were unnerved by the feeling of being watched by unseen eyes. Old legends recounted the mountain as a place where world and spirit intertwined, giving it an almost haunted aura. Some say the spirits of ancient warriors still guarded the mountain, protecting it from invaders. Captain Marino, an Italian partisan, whispered that the mountain's haunted legends were true, and that the spirits did not favor the soldiers. He claimed that during the fiercest fighting, soldiers heard whispers carried by the wind, urging surrender. Despite the superstitions, the Americans launched their assault into the caves and ridges. The fighting was intense, with both sides taking heavy losses. Throughout the engagement, strange lights flickered in the darkness, adding to the eerie atmosphere. The few officers who dared to speak of the haunted legends felt a chill run down their spines. Over time, the battle became not just a struggle of firepower, but of will against unseen forces. Some soldiers believed that the mountain spirits aimed to protect the ancient fortress from modern conquerors. In the end, the Americans managed to break through the defenses after days of brutal combat. The haunted legends of Mount Camerata became part of Sicily's folklore forever. The mountain's eerie reputation persisted long after the war had ended, whispered about in local taverns, and the stories of ghostly figures and mysterious lights continue to haunt those who dare to explore its ancient caves. On July 14, 1943, a small American Army plane flew low over Villalba, trailing a yellow banner with a large black L. The pilot dropped a nylon bag containing a yellow handkerchief with the same letter. The bag landed near the home of the village priest, Monsignor Giovanni Vizzini, brother of the local mafia boss. It was found by Italian soldier Raniero Nuzzolese and handed to Corporal Angelo Riccioli of the Carabinieri. The next day the plane returned and dropped another bag, this time near the house of Don Calogero Vizzini, also known as Zu Calò. Carmelo Bartolomeo, a household servant, picked it up and delivered it to Don Calò. At that time, he was one of the most powerful mafia bosses in Sicily, some even calling him the capo di tutti capi. Once a lowly mafioso, he had built his fortune in 1922 when he led a group of discontented peasants to seize land from absentee landowners. Every peasant got a plot, but he kept more than 30,000 acres for himself. Don Calogero survived the anti-mafia crackdown under Prefect Mori, though he was kept under house arrest for outspoken criticism of Mussolini. In 1931 he was exiled, but when he returned in 1937 he was greeted with a hero's welcome. He instantly recognized the yellow silk handkerchief with the letter L as a sign of the mafia. Just as with Lotto, a member previously saved from conviction by being declared insane and secretly sent to America. That evening, Don Calogero sent a young peasant, Mangiapane, to Musumeli with a letter hidden in his jacket. Written in mafia code, it gave instructions to Zupepi, Giuseppe Genco Russo, about escorting the American troops. 3 days later, a jeep with 2 American soldiers and a civilian dashed into Villalba, flying a yellow pennant with a black L. After a brief skirmish with Italian troops, the message again reached Don Calogero. Later that day, 3 American tanks rolled into Villalba. Don Calogero arrived, showed his yellow handkerchief as identification, and was taken behind Allied lines. There, he was made an honorary colonel in the U.S. Army, and the GIs nicknamed him General Mafia. In the mountains around San Vito, Colonel Salemi had deployed artillery and German tanks, yet on July 21st, 2/3 of his men deserted after nocturnal visits from friends, who convinced them to lay down their arms. Salemi himself was captured by the Mafia and imprisoned in the town hall. Soon after, Allied troops advanced unopposed. The Battle of Camerata was won without a single shot. Don Calogero accompanied the Americans to the edge of his territory before returning to replace all fascist mayors with his own men. He became mayor of Villalba himself and received permission from the Americans to carry firearms. The L continued to function as a sign of safe passage, especially since roughly 15% of American troops were of Sicilian ancestry. The L stood for Luciano, Lucky Luciano, who was then serving a lengthy prison sentence in the United States. Through Operation Underworld, Luciano worked with the Navy to prevent sabotage at the docks and to gather intelligence. In return, he was promised eventual clemency and deportation. Luciano indirectly helped the Americans with the invasion of Sicily, though he later denied it. The result was that countless lives were saved as the Mafia neutralized resistance. After the war, Governor Dewey granted Luciano clemency and he was deported to Italy. He died in Naples in 1962. Don Calogero remained influential into old age and eventually died in Villalba, where thousands attended his funeral. Above the cathedral hung a tribute reading, "He was an honest man." Don Calogero had once said, "When I die, the Mafia dies." He was wrong.